Election promises are all over. Candidates are coming out and saying that I'm going to do this, I'm going to give away this, and so many promises. There's one promise I think we should all stand by. While there can be many conversations around negotiating about IMF agreement, cutting down taxes, if we keep all that aside, there's a pressing concern for people, the common people. And that is our public transport. When they say, I'll give this, I'll give that, just check actually if it's an investment, it's a worth investment on public transportation system. When we say public transportation system, many people think, okay, the way to solve it is we'll import more buses and then we'll field it. In all the routes, the problem will be solved. We'll field more trains on the same routes, the problem will be solved. Of course, that is not the answer. Or maybe you can think even let's do more highways, more LRTs. Of course, that all can be complementary, but there are fundamentals that we need to solve. There's economics also behind public transport. Just because of its public doesn't mean on one side the state has to provide everyone a transportation service. There's some market aspect for it. At the moment, the problem is it is basically vehicles that are commuting, not people. And that's one reason we all get stuck in traffic jams, because when everyone wants to come driving their own vehicle, basically your road space is getting occupied by more vehicles without commuting people. Actually, what sort of vehicles which are commuting more people are the buses, but you do not have an incentive to move for a bus by keeping your vehicle at home, because of course the buses are crowded and it's very inconvenient. And of course it's not access friendly. The disabled community or the elderly community cannot access the buses. It's same for railway. If you recall, the railway station, you have to climb up about like 20-30 staircase on one side and again come down to cross the railway track, and that is of course not an easy task for an elderly citizen or a senior citizen, because that's not convenient. So what is the solution? It's easy to talk about and comment about the problem, but what's the solution? The solution is we have to incentivize the large capacity vehicles where people should shift from the individual vehicles to public transport on one side. And even if you look at a popular bus route where most of the middle class people reside, like Maharagama, Kottawa, that 138 bus route, there is not a single air-conditioned bus in 138 route. Have you ever thought, why is that? There's a Homagama depot, and there's also the state-owned CTB buses, but there's no air-conditioned buses, especially a country like Sri Lanka where the temperature is around 25 to 30. It is not easy to, it's not convenient to commute by a bicycle or without air conditioning, because the young professionals, that's not convenient. So why is that? And that reason is basically to happen all this because we have forgotten about the market dynamics of this transport issue. The market dynamics is, the first is we have to incentivize people to shift from their personal vehicles to vehicles which can carry many people, or the high capacity vehicles the people have to shift, and there has to be an incentive. And that's one good move that we tried out, was the bus lane system, because when you have a specified lane for buses, that means that track moves faster. So then people have an incentive, okay, the bus lane moves faster, there's no point I am stuck in my own personal vehicle, spending my own money combusting fuel, because the bus moves faster. But of course the problem is the bus is not convenient, so definitely we have to improve the quality of the buses. But how are we going to do it? You may think, okay, the government is going to import buses, or are we going to give a subsidy? No, rather than that, we have to think about the market aspect. So ideally, one probable solution is we have to list down the routes, and we can give those routes on a franchise model where you ask all bus owners to convene together and set up their own unit or their own company, and then of course there can be multiple companies, but they have to bid for that route, and the lowest price or the lowest bidder can get that route, and their responsibility is operating buses from, let's say, 4 a.m. in the morning to, let's say, 12 in the midnight. And there can be, the frequency can be differed, because from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. the frequency may be low, and from probably from about 10:30 p.m. to 12 midnight the frequency may be low, but there can be ensured there will be a bus operating, and that bus association get all the revenue collected, and then they can share the profit. So then there will be no competition in that route just to delay the bus till you get more passengers to your particular trip. So that's one option, but of course that requires a franchise model. You have to identify the routes, and then of course you have to specify the guidelines, and if the government really wants, they can have a regulatory authority to monitor whether the bus are in a particular standard and whether they are operating at the right time, whether they are adhering to the specific timetable. All that can be considered, and we can actually have a specific limitation where which the buses have the accessibility, because now what we see at the road as buses are not actually buses. Those are lorry bodies with chassis are considered as buses, and that's why you have to climb that 3 steep steps, which is definitely not accessible for common people. And if we can have that system, of course, then things could have been better. We also have to think about, from the bus owners front, how can they bring down the cost, because at the moment there's a bus driver and there's a conductor, but if there's a bus system that you have an automated door where you can cut down the conductor's operation, so then they can make this bus operation more profitable, because instead of paying salaries for 2 people, they now only have to pay salaries for 1 person, and of course you can have that card to pay for your bus fare. Of course you can have multiple options. You can, as you have seen in many other countries, you can buy a transport card like you're taking your gym membership for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, or it can be route specific. You can have multiple options, so then you can get cash in advance, and you just have to tap and go when you are entering the buses, and you will have many buses, so the rush will be lower, and people will slowly shift from their personal vehicles also to public transport, and that will be a big relief on people's cost of living as well, because a lot of young executives, they spend quite a lot of money from their salary as the lease payment for vehicles as well as for fuel, just to stuck in traffic. But it doesn't mean it's only the buses. There's an ecosystem, because everyone needs a last mile coverage, and that's where the tuk-tuks or the other modes of transportation comes in, and that market also need to operate, and that's why we are against the price regulation. There's already the tech companies, the platform companies like PickMe, Uber are operating. That's also a critical part of this ecosystem. Same with trains. I mean, the timetable can be given out as a franchise model, or the routes, it can be unbundled. Then there will be many services connected with the train services, so as buses, so the public can have a better public transportation system with convenience. We have to think about the economics of this problem. Of course, we need to have LRTs, we need to have highways, all that is important, but we all know our treasury is pretty much bankrupt. We really do not have money for these investments. That investments are necessary when the time is right. We have to get the assistance. Those are important for continuation. But what can be done with the current setup? Of course, our bus owners are not going to be very happy at the initial stage, because already they have invested a lot of money on the route permit, which is more expensive than the bus itself. So there has to be a negotiation process that needs to take place. But of course, we have to improve the standard of the buses with more accessibility, and that is one promise that all candidates should not forget, and we as people should stand behind, because that will expand our economy. Because if the buses are operating, if the public transport is available from, let's say, 4 a.m. to 12 midnight, that means when tourists are here, basically the shops can be operated rather than 7 o'clock till probably about 10, 12 in the midnight. That means there will be more consumption taking place. That means there's more energy required. That means there will be more spending by the tourists. That means the economy is slowly growing. And that can also create more opportunities for many people. And that is going to grow our economy, and economic growth is one of the key things that we have to consider in this recovery process. So when you are evaluating for who you are voting for, their policies, just check what are the sensible ideas on public transportation. But of course, just because you introduce a card or just because you are building a LRT will not solve our problem. We have to think about the market dynamics, because at the moment we are commuting more vehicles than people, and we have to think on that basic economics of public transport. Advocata is an independent, non-partisan economic research institute and a think tank. If you want to follow more stories, please follow us and subscribe. Advocata Institute is our English channel. We are also in Sinhala. You can subscribe and follow Advocata Plus. And we are also in Tamil. You can follow Advocata Kural. And we are pretty much present in all social media platforms. So subscribe us if you are enjoying these types of videos and content. We'll see you in a new video next week.
If you are interested in seeing more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Advocata on all social media platforms to never miss out on our latest content. Consider supporting Advocata by becoming an individual subscriber. Gain access to our weekday media monitoring of economic news, exclusive Advocata events, and more. To learn more, visit us at support.advocata.org.